Hello there, I'm Michael Szalapski, and I'm done hiding. Now I'm shining, like I'm born to be. And it's time for another tutorial. And you know, together we're glowing. It's gonna be golden. Someone asked for a tutorial on this technique that was done in the tutorial on making Trapcode Particular run faster if you've got a weird bug that makes it run really, really slow. I said, yes, you can do this on text, you can do it on logos, you can have it look in a couple of different ways. So let's dive right in. I've got Trapcode Particular applied to this solid layer here. So let's hop into the designer. Now I like using the designer when I first start out in a project, just so I can get the basic overall motion and shape and kind of like movement of the particles right. And then I'll go into After Effects to mess with how it is in the context of the comp and of course to animate it. But I like to start in the designer. You've got access to all these things here, and especially the more systems you get, the easier it is to jump between them instead of all the twirl downs in After Effects. So first things first, we've got our emitter here, and we don't want it to be coming out of a point, we want it to be coming out of text. So I'm going to switch it to a text mask emitter, and you see right away, it changes something here. But you can't really see that there's any text there. If I crank up the particles per second to say 2000, you can kind of sort of make out that there's a word there. And there's a couple of things happening here that make it hard to read. If I just kind of pause it right here, maybe you let it go. If I can pause it right there, yeah, you really can't tell anything there. A couple things. One is the emitter size. We needed to put that down to 1. The emitter size in this case is its depth, how deep the emitter is in Z. Your X and your Y, the width and the height of your emitter is going to be determined by the size of your mask or your text. But we want it to be, so it's much more readable. Instead of having a very deep, really deep T, you wouldn't really be able to see it's a T. But it's still not visible, and that's because the particles are moving off. If I hit play, you see they're moving off immediately when they get born, and that makes it hard to read. If I just take this velocity over life curve, so over the life of the particle, how much it's going to be moving, I take this down to 0, beginning, and then on this one, you see suddenly it's very visible because the particles are born, and then they wait for a bit, and then they take off. Speaking of, we don't want this to be coming from inside. I just want it coming from the edges. So for our layer here, not say faces, say edges. There we go. That's working quite nicely. And while we're talking about the movement, let's turn the velocity down just a little bit. We don't need them to be flying off quite that much. Let's make it to be 50 or so. I don't really need to change much on this particle type thing, except let's just add a little bit of life randomness in here, 20%. So everything's just a little bit less perfect and in sync. Let's take our size down a bit. We'll put it down to 2, and we'll make the size randomness maybe 50 or so. That makes it feel a lot more detailed and have a lot more visual interest with the variation in the particle sizes there. And you know what? Let's hop into the presets here and go down to our smooth and grab this bell curve. So the particles are born, grow up to their size from nothing, and then they fly off and then fade back down into nothing. Now you'll notice on our velocity over life curve, they don't move at all until after this first line here, and on our size over life, they grow up to full size right at that line. So they're at full size before they even move. So that's just a nice little thing for making this work this way. And for our opacity, we want these to kind of a nice flickery look. So I'm going to go to the presets, and down here in the flicker section, I'm going to grab this flicker slope 1. That way they're at full opacity, and then they just kind of start flickering as they move off. It just makes things feel like it's all glittery in the air, which is really cool. And using the preset means I don't have to try to draw this little, very tiny little spikes of opacity jumps. Just grab it in the preset. It's very handy. For our color, let's pick over life. So it'll start a very bright yellow and then end on a kind of an orangey. We could start with maybe looking for something golden in here. The smoky fire looks pretty golden. We just gotta select, delete, move this to the end here. There's a quick little tip here for you. If you know you're gonna be glowing your particles, you have to have color information in all of the color channels. I'll show you why. Here in this scene, I've got, if you look up here in our little info panel up here, I've got red, fully red, but no information in the blue or green channels. This one's got all green, no red and blue. This one, blue. And this one's got information in the green and blue, but none in the red. This one's got it, in red and green, but no blue. And this one's red and blue, but no green. If I apply a glow to all of this, you'll see it doesn't really glow correctly the way you would want it to be. This is just blue. It doesn't like glow out. It doesn't matter how high I crank this amount up. It's still going to be blue with a little bit of weird color fringing and stuff, but it's really not looking the way you want it to look. And that's because you don't have information in the channels for it to glow. If I apply a tint here and just crank the tint up just a little bit, you'll see it starts correctly glowing the way you would want. And as I crank up the amount of glow, it blows out to pure white on all of them. So you want to do that with your particles. When you're messing with your particle color, make sure there's color information in all the color channels. And the way that would make sure we have information in all the color channels is just to pull it off the side there, over here somewhat, and you see we got more. And actually this middle one here, I'm gonna want to be much more orangey, so we'll do that. And again, making sure we've got color information in all the color channels. And this red one here at the end, we'll probably want to make that more of a brown color. Again, making sure it's not on that side there, just in somewhat. And we'll check this one real quick. Maybe make it a little more colorful. And I'm gonna want this edge to be a little hotter, so I'm gonna say these particles can be in screen blending mode there. So there we go. That's looking pretty nice and pretty sparkly. Now to get our particles to have nice organic motion coming off these letters, I'm going to use the new-ish Air Physics inside Trapcode Particular. It's much more natural movement than the old displacement type of fractal movement that we had in there. And in this newer wind, if you blow it real hard with a strong wind force and then take the wind down to 0, the particles keep moving because they're reacting to things in a physically accurate way, whereas the old drift, they would snap back. In the old displacement, they would snap back to where they go. Much more natural, much more smooth. I love it. Let's do it. So in the environment, for effect position, I'm going to put this up to like, say, 100 or so. And you'll see they wait because we have the velocity over life set to down. So they still wait, and then they let the wind and turbulence and whatnot push them around. But this is moving a little fast. I want to have more large sweeping motions. So Perlin noise, the smaller the scale, the larger the apparent motion is, but I'm going to crank the octave multiplier to 0.7 just to have a little bit more detail in there, but still have the big sweeping overall motion. That's looking pretty good. Maybe crank the particles per second up a little bit more, maybe 4,000 or so we can really see, yeah, that's looking really good. Now, I do want some more detail in here, so let me pause that real quick. I'm going to make another system, and I'm going to want them to be emitting from these parent particles. But first, because if I apply them now, it's just going to be flying all over the place, filling the screen with these. We don't want that. Let's make it about 10 particles per second, so we don't need that many. And you know what? While I'm thinking about it, let's make the life go down. We don't need much life to 0.5, and the life randomness of 90. And let's make the size smaller as well. Like maybe make a size 1 with a randomness of 90. If I hit play, you see, oh, there's just barely the scene there in the middle, because that's what we want. We just want nice, subtle little things coming off the main ones, but they're not coming off the main ones yet. Let's go to our emitter type and say you will emit from the parent. But we don't want them emitting right away when the particles are sitting still here. So let's put this emission from the life of the parent particle down, so they only emit when the particle starts moving. And you know what? Speaking of the particle moving, let's say your amount of particles per second are going to come from the parent speed. So this is a kind of a multiplier on top of parent speed. So the parent particles aren't moving very much. They won't be spitting out very many. And then as they get to full motion, they'll be spitting out more. So there we go. And we don't need that much velocity coming off of here. I think maybe just 10 is fine. So they stay trailing behind their parent particles somewhat. There we go. But velocity from the parent motion, let's go to 60. So they're going to be taking more of the velocity from their parent particles. There we go. Look at that. Nice little chunks flying along with them there. And we'll say color from parent, not 100%. We'll just take 90%. That way they've got a little bit extra color in their color channels, and they'll glow just a little bit more, and they'll kind of pop out. There we go. That's looking great. Let's take them and make them even more sparkly. Let's say take your opacity from the parent particle, and then so this becomes 0 to 10% of the parent particle's opacity. And let's make this flicker like crazy. We want these to be really glittery looking, so I'm going to take this flicker 2 preset and hit apply there. And there we go. Ah, yes. That's beautiful. Gorgeous and flickery. Well, one thing I want to point out, if you're nervous about working in the designer for a bit, and you want to save your project, you don't have to apply, hope things go well, save it, and come back into the designer and launch it back up again. You can just hit Save Project down here, and it saves your After Effects project in the background behind the designer window and lets you keep on working without breaking your creative flow. But anyway, we're done with the overall particle motion. Let's hit Apply and jump back into After Effects. Now it's time to tweak things in the context of our comp and swap in our word instead of the word Trapcode. Let's add our text in here. We'll type golden flow, and we'll reset that to the middle there. Maybe push it up just a smidge. And let's put that below our particle layer. Now, for this to be an emitter, you need it to be a 3D layer. That's important because you can move it all around in 3D space. Let's go back under here on Trapcode Particular, hit All Systems, Emitter Settings. We're going to go down here to where it says Text Mask Emitter, and say, grab our golden flow text. And right away, you see we've got text with the particles coming off the edges of it. You can import SVGs or Illustrator files into After Effects and convert them into shape layers. The SVGs convert by default, and then you just gotta copy the path from the shape layers onto masks in After Effects, and this will work on text or on mask paths. You'll see that we don't have a ton of particles anymore. At least it doesn't feel like it used to. That's because we're spitting the same number of particles per second, just over a lot larger bit of text. So I'm gonna bump this particles per second up to like, say, 20,000. And that'll give us much more of the look that we're after. Let's have a look-see. There we go. Now it's getting a little slow here, but it's not too bad. It's just got a lot of particles. If I take a look up here, we've got, 500,000 particles happening on screen right now. So, that's not bad for performance-wise. Now, keep in mind, if your particular is running extremely slow, even on simple setups with not a lot of particles, there's a little bug we've seen that's affected some folks, and we posted a video recently on here about how to make Trapcode Particular faster. So try that little trick out, but also just try updating. The latest version of Trapcode Particular's got a lot of things in it that seem to make things work a lot better for folks. So update and then try that little fix, and hopefully Trapcode Particular will be back to working nice and fast for you. And let's go back to the beginning here. And you know what? We don't even need to see our text. We can turn that off. But you see, we don't have any particles showing up here. If we scroll this up and go down to our global controls, all systems, we can say pre-run this by, 3 seconds or so. That means it'll run the simulation for 3 seconds before frame 0. And then at frame 0, we get our particles and you hit play. And you just start with a golden flow happening. So it's up to you. Again, it depends on how you want your system to work. You can ramp up the count of particles per second, do whatever you need. Again, this is up to you. But now we want to get some nice glowing here into our scene. And to do that, let's do some optical glow. We'll add a new adjustment layer here. And to that adjustment layer, we will apply optical glow. Now you see right away, we've got a little bit of a problem here on these particles that are fading off into visibility. They become a lot more visible. And that is because of how optical glow works. You see in this example here, I've got this color. It's the same color all the way through. It just fades off into nothing over here. If I turn the black back on, if I put glow over top of this whole thing on this adjustment layer here, you'll see glow off, glow on. This becomes way more visible. That's because optical glow doesn't really have a concept of alpha. It just says, hey, I see this color. I'm going to glow this color. You might not want that. You might want your particles to be able to fade off more gradually, and that's fine. You just need to put something behind it. In this case, we're just going to do a black solid layer and pop it underneath everything. And you'll see without the solid layer, with the solid layer. Now the glow is looking at everything multiplied with that black, and now it fades off the way you want it to. And I'll copy this layer because we want that same thing in this comp. We'll put that black solid back there and we'll name it black background. And while we're naming things, let's name this optical glow. But anyway, you'll see with this black background there, it makes a big difference on how that glow looks. Speaking of how that glow looks, let's crank up the size. I don't like the default 25. I really like around somewhere between 150 and 400, depending on the scene. That's already looking much nicer, but I want this glow to be a little bit warmer. Now you could mess with these colors here, and I will make it maybe 20% on the vibrance there, but I'm gonna mess with the channel size. I'm gonna glow the red really big and take the blue down to maybe 50. And that makes it have a nice red to kind of yellowish to a white center there. It's looking gorgeous. And it just gives out your glow a nice new kind of flavor. I'm gonna make the fall off, I'll crank it all the way up to 200. It makes the glow a lot tighter to the particles. I'm gonna crank this highlight roll off up to about 80 or so. It keeps it looking nice and hot in the middle, but it helps preserve some of the detail that can get lost when the glow is a little too bright. Up to a full 100 makes it feel a little too dim. So about 80 seems to work for me on this scene. But again, fuss with it for yours. Anytime you've got subtle gradients like this, especially with glows, and then you compress them for delivery, they can get like nasty banding showing up in there, which you might be seeing on YouTube right now, I don't know. So let's make another adjustment layer real quick, just so we can have things clearly separated. I'm gonna call this one grain. There are a bunch of different ways to add grain to things to give them the banding of fighting powers, but I'm going to use Renoiser because it's a full-on film grain emulator. It even displaces pixels like real film grain does. It's quite nice. I'm going to pick the Cinema Holdout preset for this. If I zoom in here in this little gradient, you see the gradient is now all the way broken up with all this little grain before and after. Again, not sure how much you can see on YouTube, but before and yep, you can see that banding, and then after, no banding. Now it looks noisy, but when you're zoomed out like this, it just looks like nice, lovely film grain it is good. If you want a bit of extra glow in there, you can turn your text layer back on and have it be visible. That way you've got your kind of nice bright golden text getting glowed, but then the nice hot outline, and it goes out like that. And of course, you can apply this on logos as well. It doesn't have to just be a text layer. Here's a lovely red giant logo with its R, and if you kind of squint a little bit, also kind of looks like a G. And that's how to get this. It's a really pretty simple effect. Take it and make it your own. Have wind blow your particles around, change the colors, change whatever parameters you need to make it fit what you need. And make sure you tag Maxon Red Giant on social media channels to share it with us. And speaking of sharing, comment down below if you've got any tutorial suggestions you'd like. This tutorial came from a comment. The next one might come from yours. Now it's our time. No fears, no lies. That's who we're born to be. I'll see you next time.